Hello, hello. Welcome to English Extras. My name is Jean. If you're here, it's because you don't want to sound like a textbook. You're in the right place. This podcast is to help intermediate and advanced learners find alternatives to textbook English so you can express yourself authentically. Before we begin, if you want the transcript for this episode, you can follow the link in the description. Reading and listening at the same time is a great way to improve your English, and I also include definitions of words and phrases I use in the episode, as well as example sentences at the end of each transcript. Ready? Let's begin. In today's episode, I want to get a little more technical. I'm going to dive into a realm of linguistics called phonetics, which is the study of how humans make the sounds we call language. This might sound incredibly boring. Fair enough. I know not everyone shares my nerdy love of linguistics. However, I'm not here to waste your time. So, even though today's topic is more technical, it's going to make a difference in how you hear and speak English. Today's topic is connected speech. Have you ever noticed how a word sounds different when said alone versus in a sentence or phrase? For example, do you hear the difference between meet you and meet you? Something happens at the beginning and ends of words when they're said together quickly. And this isn't unique to English. Every language does this. Remember, native speakers are lazy. In fact, it happens so often that I decided to divide this topic into 2 episodes. So today, let's talk about some common patterns of connected speech you'll hear when listening to native speakers. The first 2 patterns fall under the same category called assimilation. By the way, I'm using the technical terms because if you want to learn more about it, it will be helpful to know exactly what it's called. The verb form of assimilation is to assimilate, which means to join together. Assimilation in the linguistic sense is when 2 sounds come together and make one new sound. The example I gave before is assimilation. Let's revisit it. Listen for the difference. Meet you versus meet you. What happened to the T? What happened to the Y? This is pattern number 1. When a T sound and a Y sound are back to back, meaning they are right next to each other, they create a new sound. Ch. Let's hear another example. Listen closely. Got you versus got you. The T at the end of got disappears, and so does the Y at the beginning of you. They blend together and create the ch sound. Now, this blending is not only between the borders of 2 words, it can also happen in the middle of a word. If a T sound and a Y sound are back to back. Listen to this word. Situation. Did you hear it? In the middle of this word, there's a T sound and a Y sound right next to each other. Situation. Situation. Once you start listening for it, you'll hear it everywhere. Let's move on to pattern number 2. It is also assimilation, and it also includes the Y sound. When a D sound and a Y sound are back to back, they create the sound J. Listen to the difference between did you and did you. Do you hear the difference? The final D sound in did gets blended with the initial Y sound in you to sound like did you. Did you? Here's another example. Need you and need you. Same thing here. The final D sound gets blended with the initial Y sound to form a J sound. The other category of connected speech I want to talk about today is called elision, sometimes called deletion. Both elision and deletion describe how sounds will disappear between words or between the syllables in one word. For our first example, listen what happens to the and when it is sandwiched between two other words. Rock and roll versus rock and roll. The initial a sound and the final d sound completely disappear, leaving only the n sound. This happens all the time whenever you aren't emphasizing the and in a phrase. Listen to the difference in the emphasis of and in this sentence. Me and her, we went to the store and the library. Just me and her. The next example of elision you'll find throughout spoken English is how the v sound in both of and have will disappear and leave only a schwa sound, which sounds like The schwa sound is everywhere in English. You hear it at the beginning of about, and again, and in the middle of words like alphabet, and dinosaur. Here's some examples of how of becomes a. A lot of becomes a lotta. Like in the sentence, I've got a lot of things to do today. Sort of becomes sorta. Like in the sentence, I sorta like it, but not really. Kind of becomes kinda. Like in the sentence, I kinda don't want to, sorry. A fan of becomes a fanna. I'm not a fan of that. This process is so common in English, in fact, that native speakers have adapted their writing to match how they speak. When sending a message to a friend, some people will write kind of as kinda, Kinda, or sort of as sorta, Sorta. The schwa sound is often represented in writing as an A. The same process happens to have, but only when it's unstressed. In standard American English, you don't change I have to Ia. It does change, but to I've. But in certain situations, have changes to a. Here's some examples of how have becomes a. Might have becomes mighta. Like in the sentence, I might have liked this cake better if it had more chocolate. Must have becomes musta. Like in the sentence, who broke your lamp? Not me. Must have been the dog. To have becomes tua. Like in the sentence, seems to have rained hard last night. And by far, the most common change with have happens after should, could, and would. In fact, this is so common that we have an expression, shoulda, coulda, woulda, which means I regret that this event happened, but I can't do anything to change it now and shouldn't worry about it anymore. Some more examples include, I shoulda listened to you. I'm sorry I didn't. He woulda tried it, but he was too scared. You coulda done better. That's it for today. If you listened to the end, well done. I encourage you to listen to this episode again if you need to. The transcript for this episode includes more notes, example sentences, and definitions of words and phrases I used. I also included links to more resources about connected speech. You can find the link to my transcript in the description. Thanks for listening. Until next time, bye.